Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today this is my 2023 hurricane season forecast, my July update for it. My last update was mid-May, that was my final preseason forecast, but now we're 1 month into the season, so we're not near the peak yet, we're not even near the highest activity time period yet, but yeah, it's months in, so there has been major changes, and without further ado, let's get started. So first off, we have the sea surface temperatures. Now, obviously, they've warmed up since the last update. We are now at 26 and 27 degrees Celsius and even 28 degrees Celsius in the southern Gulf Stream, 30 degrees Celsius in the western Gulf and the Gulf Loop near the Bahamas and the Florida East Coast. Throughout the Caribbean, we're in the 29s and the MDR 28s and 29 degrees Celsius. So obviously very favorable for storm development in terms of sea surface temperatures, and those high sea surface temperatures will turn a lot of these systems from tropical storms and just low and tropical cyclones up to hurricane strengths and even to major hurricane strengths in some cases. So we're really going to have to watch out for that. Sea surface temperature anomaly. So of course we have widespread high sea surface temperatures. We do see the Bahamas, the Gulf, the Caribbean, much of the MDR, and pretty much the whole Atlantic except maybe a bit of the northeast coast. We are really at all above average sea surface temperatures, even with the El Nino. I'm not talking about ENSO today because we are at a 0.7. We are in an El Nino. We've been going around 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 for the past half months. And really, we all know we're in an El Nino. We're going to be in an El Nino the whole hurricane season. It's quite obvious now. I've talked about it a lot. There's no need to go over that or the specifics and sea surface temperatures and shear and to make all these graphics, because we already know what's going to happen in terms of that, in terms of El Nino and so. Anyway, moving on. Shear. So shear has gone down in the models recently. And by the way, I'm not going to be showing MJO. I never really do, but that's more short term, and I'm talking about the whole hurricane season here, obviously. Anyway, so we do see a higher shear in the northern Gulf for the peak of the season off the East Coast, and a little bit in the Caribbean and main development region. Though this is much less than expected, and at many points during the season, we are expected to have good areas of shear. So tropical cyclone development and hurricane landfalls are still at high threat. So we're really going to have to watch out for that. But of course, there's not really any below average here except for the eastern MDR, which can really get these systems forming to go across the Atlantic, and whether they go out to sea or not, yeah. Of course, the Bermuda High is going to be stronger than usual this year. Troughing is going to help turn these storms near land. So yeah, we definitely saw that. I covered that in previous hurricane season updates, forecasts, stuff like that. Anyway, moving on. So let's start with the total accumulated precipitation months by months from July to November. So basically, we're going to use the CFS, the most accurate. This is one of the newest runs. And what this shows us is the sea surface temperatures show us, not sea surface temperatures, the total accumulated precipitation anomaly shows us where many of these low pressure systems, tropical cyclones, up to a lot of these hurricanes could go in the Atlantic. So for July, we don't really see any concentrated areas except out in the main development region. We could see many of those systems forming, going out to sea, maybe even going towards Puerto Rico, Jamaica, places like that, but then eventually recurving based on the current pattern of the Bermuda High this month and troughing. And then, of course, in parts of the western Caribbean, in the Bahamas region, we could see maybe some pop-up tropical storm there, but no major threats like from a hurricane or anything. Of course, tropical storm threats are harder to track sometimes because they can just be pop-up a lot of times, like thunderstorms. Hurricanes, major hurricanes, you can really see that coming. They're easier to forecast when you're talking about landfall threats. Now we're moving to August. August is really interesting. You see this huge band of above average precipitation. Also, if I say above average sea surface temperatures, I mean above average precipitation. So sea surface temperatures, of course, are going to be above average for the whole Atlantic, but in this section, sea surface temperatures. So, so basically, we do see here how much of the main development region, Bahamas, up till the Florida East Coast, you see into the northern Florida, highly above average precipitation. So basically what we could see in that huge area of above average sea surface precipitation from the central MDR all the way to Florida is how many tropical cyclones, many of those could be hurricanes, are going to be a threat there during the month of August. So we could see systems going towards the Bahamas. And then, of course, the above average precipitation in Florida, that could mean systems are going through there, hurricanes, stuff like that. And the Eastern Gulf above average precipitation could mean that there could be hurricanes or tropical cyclones there. So that's another area we have to watch out for. Also, sorry if I'm messing up words. Sometimes happens. Anyway, so basically, high above average precipitation in the Eastern MDR. Those would likely go out to sea. And then we do see maybe some Bahamas but out the sea systems towards Bermuda in that second area where there is high above average precipitation. October, this threat comes back for Florida and the southeastern coast. Let me go back here. That's also a Carolinas threat, as you can see, above average precipitation for the Carolinas. Anyway, back here. So I forgot to cover that. So October, we do see how above average precipitation returns, and a lot of it is now in the more northern Florida parts. Florida, western Florida, areas like that. So we do see the above average precipitation could, you see there towards the Leeward Islands, to the Bahamas, to Florida, to the Eastern Gulf and Northern Caribbean. We can see many systems going towards Jamaica, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and then towards the Bahamas, many towards the Florida East Coast, and many going through the Eastern Gulf are going from the outer Atlantic to the Eastern Gulf and becoming a threat to the Florida Panhandle, Florida Big Bend area. As you can see, lots of above average precipitation there. And a little bit of a Carolinas threat, as you see off the coast of the Carolinas, above average precipitation. November, finally, just more western towards Mexico, Yucatan, towards Puerto Rico and the outer MDR. We do see open Atlantic MDR region. Sea surface temperatures there, not as much of a land threat, but November is never really a big hurricane month. That's, of course, when the last month of hurricane season. We're not near there yet, but that's when hurricane season is coming down. These are just the highlights for the season, and that circle and arrow is to show you what that text is there for. It's for that purple bluish region. So above average development, of course, we saw there not as much shear. So that pink is due to the lower not the lower average shear in some places and average to slightly above average shear in some places. But the above average precipitation shows there could be many systems in those areas, and high sea surface temperatures has caused a widespread area of above average development. And like I said, due to the below average shear in the Eastern MDR, there's a darker shade of above average development, meaning that's going to be even more development than other areas potentially. But still, anywhere in that pink, there is going to be above average development. And the below average development, of course, is near South America, especially below the Leeward Islands. You see the darker orangey color. And the Western Gulf, that's where the shear is always hitting the hardest. And a lot of times, especially near the South American coast, we do see a below average sea surface temperatures. And that shear and not much precipitation and the anomalies is why there is below average for the western and parts of Central Gulf. Now, hurricane landfall chances. The reason I'm not doing tropical storms or major hurricanes is major hurricanes are, of course, harder to predict. There's not as many. Tropical storms, they can just be pop up, and the chances are going to be really high for everywhere. So hurricane season, we're going to do hurricane landfall chances. This is the most concerning part of the hurricane season because these are probably the least pop-up systems. You can see them coming, but they're also pretty common in the hurricane season, obviously. So we can make these probabilities. So these are not tropical storm, not major hurricane landfall chances. So this does not include tropical storms. And this does not mean your system will be a major hurricane, but hurricanes are still bad. So, sorry, I just got to get that out of the way, of course, because usually I do tropical storm, all tropical depression, all tropical system chances. But that doesn't really seem to work. So, below 5%, we do see Newfoundland, Maine, stuff like that. You'll never get hurricanes. We're not gonna say you're gonna get one. You do have a chance, but it's below 5%. Same for the South American coast and southern Central America. Y'all really don't get hurricanes. They're usually more north So nothing to worry about that. 10% towards Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. And historically, there has been some hurricanes there in these type of seasons, but those were way in the past. So there's a chance, but again, really only 10%. Nothing crazy. 20%. 20% is going to be for the Bay of Campeche, Nicaragua, Honduras, Yucatan, places, southern Yucatan, and places like that, because, of course, you can have some hurricanes go through the Yucatan into the Bay of Campeche or through the Caribbean towards Nicaragua, Honduras, the Yucatan. And, of course, historically, there has been some systems that have gone towards Massachusetts. Those are a little more likely than, of course, Maine, Rhode Island, places like that. And then, of course, we have a little bit of an area on the Georgia coast. It's just that Georgia usually doesn't get hurricane landfalls. They usually go either to the Carolinas or towards Florida. Not saying that the Georgia coast is Georgia East Coast is not at a threat of hurricanes. You're at a pretty significant threat. Just that they don't exactly make landfall exactly. I'm not saying you can't get hurricane conditions. That's not at all what I'm saying. But usually they recurve or just go through Florida. So moving on, 30%, New Jersey, Virginia. They're things like Sandy, hurricanes like that gives y'all the threat for this year. One of the analogs is 2012. Analogs have been changing a lot. Decided not to show it in this video. They're not being very consistent. But many people agree, and what the models are showing is that these are the hot spots that are likely to happen. And one of those is 2012 Sandy. So that gives New Jersey a higher than average chance, Virginia a higher than average chance, as well as the Galveston, Houston area, where, like I said, below average chance, but still good 30% chance. Same for areas of Mexico. 40% chance, the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I do think any hurricanes that will hit North Carolina will be a little more south, but y'all are at a good risk, as well as a little bit of Louisiana and central Texas or southern Texas, where good chance of a hurricane landfall, central Texas, southern Texas, Mexico border area, towards the southwest coast of Florida. Y'all are at a very high risk this year. It's just that usually, as y'all know, it would be a little more north of y'all, giving y'all probably hurricane impacts, or they would go towards Miami and y'all would still get hurricane impacts. It's just that, like I said, it's not your exact area of landfall where you would expect it, but you will still have, if a hurricane makes landfall in southeastern Florida, y'all are still pretty much the same risk as them. So y'all are still at a risk. 50%, 40% also Leeward Islands. 50%, we do see Haiti, Puerto Rico, Jamaica. You all have systems that goes through Jamaica or near Jamaica, giving y'all hurricane landfall. The reason this isn't hurricane impacts is because the entirety of hurricane impact is going to depend on how strong the system is and how fast it's moving. And that can go inland. So this is just your exact landfall points, which is usually what we do. But obviously, if this were literal, it would just imply that only the coast is getting hurricane impacts. Obviously not true. So hurricane landfall chances. 50%, Central Cuba, places like that. Central Florida, near Tampa, you can have systems that go through the Caribbean or away from the Bahamas towards those regions. Central Cuba, Jamaica, places like that. Northern Caribbean systems. 60%, Western Florida, the Bahamas, the edges of Cuba, and southern Florida, which is really a whole Florida threat, the whole Florida Peninsula, east coast of Florida, western Florida. Really, based on analogs 2018, 2004, systems can go through y'all, and hurricanes are definitely not exempt from that. So really going to have to look at hurricane impacts here for those regions. So that's why I have that. And then the Bahamas, obviously, Florida's at a threat. Hurricanes almost always go through the Bahamas before hitting southern Florida. And then, of course, usually hurricanes hit Cuba at the tips, like western Cuba or eastern Cuba. And that's what we're going to be looking at, higher than average threat there. And here is my crazy change in my forecast. Previous forecast, 13 to 16 named storms, so average. 7 to 9 hurricanes, average to maybe slightly above average. 2 to 4 major hurricanes, average. So yeah, near normal season, below normal, because I was expecting less major hurricanes and less hurricanes at this time. I was expecting quantity over quality. I'm now expecting quality over quantity, which means many of these systems will be well-formed systems. Now, 16 to 22 named storms vary above average. 8 to 12 hurricanes vary above average. 4 to 6 major hurricanes vary above average. So very above normal season, very above average due to quality of systems and many hurricanes and major hurricanes. And obviously that is due to, you see these precipitation parameters. You see the below normal shear in some places. The area in the MDR are going to put out a lot of low pressure systems. It's just completely changed. And now the hotspots are the MDR, especially that eastern area, the Northern Caribbean, Eastern Gulf. You saw the precipitation, the Bahamas waters, offshore of the South Seas coast. You really saw that. And that, of course, is going to go towards Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, places like that. Those are the highest risk states. We see that here. For the Florida East Coast, is going to be the number one hotspot, and then, of course, very high hotspots, above average chances, of course, are going to be Western Florida, that is the Florida Panhandle and Florida Big Bend, Northern South Carolina, and Southern North Carolina. But really, the whole coastal Carolina is at an above average threat. Just Northern South Carolina and Southern North Carolina is usually where systems will hit exactly on the Carolinas. So really, this is a thumbnail, obviously. That was the video premiere. If y'all have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And guys, if I ever have these mess ups, please bear with me. I do not script my videos usually. I just like to go along with them. Y'all probably already knew that though. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one, and goodbye.